Of all the clutter categories, I find paper the most boring. I just can't get excited about decluttering paper like I can the other categories, and that's probably because paper tends to be one of the least visible, and yet it's also one of the most stressful. So today I'm going to teach you a faster way to declutter your paper. Literally, I'm going to teach you the FA.S.T.R method that I invented to declutter your paper faster. So let's get started. What's up, fam, and welcome back. Or if you're new around here, welcome for the first time. My name is Marissa, and I am a recovering emotional hoarder turned minimalist mom, and today I want to help you declutter paper in your home. This is the highly requested 6th episode in my Messy to Minimal series that was inspired by Miss Natalie Bennett. And in part 1, we decluttered my kitchen together. In part 2, we tackled the pantry. In part 3, we decluttered my kids' room, including their toys, books, and clothing. In part 4, we got a little bit emotional when we decluttered my office. And then in part 5, we decluttered my bathroom, and I revealed a somewhat embarrassing attachment to black toilet paper. So if you haven't seen parts 1 through 5, I will link the playlist down below so that you can watch it. Before we get started, I would appreciate if you would go down and give that like button a little tap-tap-tap-a-roo for the YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to my channel if you love decluttering and you want more ideas on how to live minimally together, especially if you have kids. The first tip that I have for you today is to evaluate your time versus your paper clutter ratio. Before you even get started gathering your paper up, I want you to think about how much time you have per day to devote to decluttering paper. Are you going to have enough time to tackle everything in one day? Or is this something that you're going to need to break up into 15-minute sessions here and there? The first time I decluttered paper myself was the hardest. I had a ton of sentimental paper clutter left behind by the deaths of my parents and many family members. And then on top of that, I also had all of my college papers that I had been saving for like 10 years. I'm talking every single syllabus, every single notebook, every single folder, every scrap of paper that I touched throughout the entirety of my college. And I kept telling myself things like, I'm going to look at this in the future.
Lies. Oh, lies!
My point with this story is that decluttering paper can be tedious depending on how long you've been holding on to it and not decluttering it. So be realistic about how much time you have. Which brings me to my second paper decluttering tip, and that's to prepare things in advance even before you get started decluttering paper. Before you even touch a single scrap of paper, I want you to have a few things ready. I did this on accident the first time that I decluttered paper, and it totally saved my bacon. Before you start decluttering, make sure that you have some boxes and bins. I think I said that with an Indiana accent. Bins. Sounds like the bins. I had a bunch of plastic bins left over from decluttering, and I labeled them so that when I sorted, it was easy to sort them into the bins to go to their appropriate areas. And then the great thing is that if I wasn't able to finish what I started that day, all I had to do was plop the lid on top of that bin, and I could just push it aside without having a bunch of paper clutter strewn all over the place. You don't have to use plastic bins if you don't have any on hand. You could also just use cardboard boxes. Other things that I recommend having before you start sorting are things like a paper shredder. We have been using the same Amazon Basics paper shredder for, I think, 8 years now? We're on our 3rd. The first one got broken in one of our many moves. The second one we sold before we moved overseas to Germany. And then the third one we have right here, which is compatible with our German electrical system. And I love the Amazon Basics paper shredder. If you have a lot of paper clutter, you want to make sure that you choose a shredder that's going to be able to shred more papers at once versus a single sheet. So we have had the Amazon 8 paper shredder and the Amazon 12. They're both very good. And they can also shred things like credit cards and CDs. I will put a link to all the things that I mentioned down below in the description just in case you want to check it out yourself. Like I said, we have had 3 Amazon Basic paper shredders and they are awesome. And then you also want to have some systems in place to organize the paper once you've decluttered it. Previously in our home, we had a filing cabinet, but now we don't have a filing cabinet anymore because we just don't keep that much paper. But we do have things like accordion folders, and I have a art folder for my children's artwork. My third paper clutter tip is to start reducing the amount of paper that is coming into your home. So you can do this by canceling magazine subscriptions, unsubscribing from brands that are sending you mailers. Depending on where you live, you might also be able to reduce paper clutter right at the mailbox when you're getting it out. For example, when we lived in the apartment complexes or the townhome complexes, many of them had recycling bins right there next to the mailbox, and I would just take out the flyers and other things that I didn't want and toss them right in the recycling. If you're really against paper clutter but you still need to save things, you could also consider going the digital route and using a scanner to scan your receipts and other things that you want to file but you don't want to keep paper for. Or for example, if you want to keep records of your kids' artworks but you don't want to keep the paper on hand, there are people who will take pictures and then they have a photo album just devoted to artwork. These are some ideas to help you reduce the amount of paper clutter that you're keeping in your home. In part 4, we're going to be gathering all the paper that we want to sort through. Remember, depending on how much time you have, this might be every single scrap of paper in your home, or it could just be a few stacks from the different rooms. So you decide how much time you have. Let's head out and let's go on a paper hunt. Okay, what we are looking for is any magazines, instruction manuals, kids' artwork, all those various kinds of paper clutter that are hiding throughout your home. Okay, so for example, even though I am a serial plant killer, my husband wants to have balcony plants this year. So he just got this, and we need to go through it together to think about what we're going to keep on our balcony. I'm going to set this aside because I know that's a keep, that's brand new. But this has been lying here since winter, and I think we can go ahead and sort it. So we're gonna put that in the pile. And here I have already found a receipt that was lying on the counter because my husband left it here because he knows that I would want to put it in the budget. So I'm going to pick this up. Now that we have our paper clutter, we are going to sort it into 5 categories, and this is where the FASTER method comes in. If you've seen my video on how to simplify your wardrobe using the 5F rule, you would know that I'm a big fan of easy to remember rules, and the FASTER method is how I decided to categorize paper for sorting and decluttering. F is for file, A is for action, S is for shred, T is for trash, and R is for recycle. Come here really quick. Come here, we need to talk. At some point, you are going to hit sentimental paper. There is a reason Marie Kondo put paper third in her book instead of first. For me, it was not only the cards and things left by my family, but it was also the college paper clutter that I had been hoarding for so long. When I finally started decluttering the paper from college, I was sobbing. And you're like,
Marissa, you cry all the time.
Here are some of the things that those papers started to mean to me, and I want you to listen and see if any of this sounds familiar. Money that had been spent towards getting my college education that was not only from me working minimum wage jobs and multiple minimum wage jobs to be able to afford that education, as well as $25,000 of student loans that I took out to be able to afford to go to college and that I had to work very, very hard to pay off. And a lot of money went into that college paper clutter, and was I really going to throw that all away? Not only the money, but also the time that went into creating that paperwork, the blood, sweat, and tears that I poured into studying to be able to get great grades. And then also it was love and hope. Okay, well, the tears are rising. The tears are rising. Okay. My mother didn't go to college, and my father went as a football player, and he dropped out after an injury, and he became a landscaper and a firefighter. He would always tell me that he wanted a better future for me than having to work like him out in the hot sun with his hands. So does any of this sound familiar to you? If you haven't touched it for that long and it's just been sitting in storage, ask yourself, has this paper already served its purpose in my life? If you hold it in your hands and it has no meaning to you other than maybe guilt and regret, you need to be realistic about if you really need that. That's not something I can tell you. That's something you have to decide for yourself. Okay, now that we've started sorting through your papers, tip number 6 is about how to know what papers to file. These kinds of papers are things like birth certificates, marriage certificates, social security cards, as well as passports. All of these are important and not very easy to replace. So those are something that you want to have some kind of long-term storage method to file. Something else that you'll probably want to file is records that are based around taxes. So those don't need to be kept indefinitely for the rest of your life, but they need to be kept for a period of 7 years. You can also go digital on something like this. So my blog and my YouTube channel are actually considered like a small business, and I do not keep any paper receipts. I have a folder for each expense, and sometimes I even have to break it down by the month. And then I also have a spreadsheet that I keep a list of the ongoing expenses and purchases for my blog. I have to show you guys this because it's hilarious. Now, this is an example of kids' artwork that I want to keep for the future because it's funny, it tells a story. My son was in class and they had to put something on a paper that said what they're thankful for Thanksgiving. And his answer was bed. I am thankful for bed. If that isn't a mood, I don't know what is. That's a great kindergarten memory. Next, in the FAST method, we have the action papers. Those are the papers that you need to take action on. For example, my husband leaves receipts out on the counter for me because he knows that I want to go and I want to put it in the budget. So when I see these receipts, that's my cue to pick them up, bring them into my office, and enter the information into my budget. Something else that I have right now that would normally go in the file pile but needs to go in the action pile is 2 of our passports, because these 2 passports from myself and my son are set to expire. So I need to take action on them to apply for an appointment for new passports for us. And so these are also going to go in the action pile. And then once you have taken the appropriate action on those take action papers, then they can be moved into the next phase and gotten rid of. The next tip is to know what you can shred. Any documents that are sensitive in nature that could be taken out of the trash and reveal identifying information about you that would compromise your finances or your safety. For example, bank statements or credit card statements or even credit card applications. Go ahead and shred those, and then check with your local municipality and see if they can recycle shredded papers. Some places can handle, some places don't. No matter what, never just throw your shredded paper out into the trash. Make sure to put it in a clear plastic bag before sending it to your local recycling center. Because shredding does make it harder for recycling, you may consider just trying to tear off the tiny piece of the paper that has the sensitive information on it and shred only that and recycle the rest. The next tip is then knowing what you can trash versus what you can recycle. Did you know that if you have used crayons or paints, things like kids' artwork cannot be recycled? Those are not recyclable items. And also any birthday cards that have like foil or glitter on them, those are also non-recyclable, and those have to be, unfortunately, go right into the trash. Yet another reason to stop sending gift cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards, and thank you cards. If you have sentimental cards that you want to keep, you could put those in the file pile because you're going to want to move those to a more permanent home, such as a memory box or some kind of album. This actually is not a sentimental card. I got this as a thank you card for a purchase that I made. I think this is kind of a weird card for an Etsy seller to send. It says, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end," which I thought was a song about bars closing, but apparently is a Seneca quote. Who knew? Luckily, this card doesn't have any glitter or any other thing on it that would prevent me from recycling it, so it's going into the recycle pile. Some easy things that you can recycle, you don't have to worry about trashing or shredding, are things like instruction manuals. This is from our Billy bookshelf. Catalogs that you get in the mail or pick up at your local stores. This is a wine one. The good thing about instruction manuals is almost everything can be found online digitally. So if you're ever worried about throwing away an instruction manual and not being able to figure something out later, first check online and see if they have the instruction manual available on the internet, and then you can go ahead and get rid of the instruction manual. You don't have to keep that and have it taking up space. And then finally, I want to teach you a simple rule that's going to help you with all incoming paper clutter from now on, and it's called the one-touch rule. The second you bring paper clutter into your home, you're going to sort it based on the F.A.S.T.R method and make that decision as soon as it comes into your home. And just with one touch, it's brought in, and one touch, it's distributed to its correct location. If you make this a habit, it's going to help you prevent those huge stacks of paper clutter that tend to accumulate on our tables and countertops all the time. So when I find receipts laying on the counter that my husband has brought in, I'm going to take those to my office, enter them into the budget, and then I'm going to appropriately recycle them. I think I could do an entire video on the one-touch rule. So if you're interested in seeing that, drop a comment below and let me know. If you haven't already, please make sure to go down and hit that like button and maybe consider subscribing to my channel to join our minimalist family. We would love to see you around again soon. Okay? Take care. Bye-bye.